Peter asked me to step in. He's on a grant, and they called him to go to Georgia. So he said, he called me and says, I have a really big favor to ask. Peter is smarter than me, but I'm cuter than him, so it comes out pretty good. Okay, I want to get the changer. Yeah, so I got my Bachelor of Science at Cook, Rutgers, graduated in '73. Then I went to University of Arkansas, and I worked with a guy that actually got his PhD at Rutgers and took all the blueberry varieties from New Jersey to Arkansas and started a blueberry industry there. And so I worked with those for 5 years. And then that's where I got my master's in plant breeding. We were breeding blueberries, strawberries, peaches, grapes, blackberries. And then I came back here and got my PhD at Rutgers in blueberry nutrition. It was perfect timing. I got out, finished in '84, and Atlantic County had just had a fellow retire. That was the agent, and he did mostly chickens and Christmas trees, but the blueberry industry said we need a blueberry agent, and so the timing was perfect. So within a half an hour of my office, there's 8,000 acres of blueberries. So that was my main deal. But the thing is also I was always into wine. I was breeding grapes in Arkansas, but when I came back to Rutgers for the PhD, all my professors were wine nuts. They would always bring wine to parties and all that stuff. So when this Farm Winery Act you would see we had a stupid law left over from Prohibition that said we could only have one winery per million people. And Prohibition was this country's attempt to show we're the stupidest country in the world. And we couldn't get rid of all that ignorance, so we had to hold on to that, one winery per million people. Well, we got the Farm Winery Act passed, and that said if you use Jersey fruit, you could have wineries. So there were 7 wineries then. Now there's over 70, and most of them have started in my office. People call me up. I want to start a winery. What's it going to cost? So I always basically say let's meet for lunch, because I figure most of these people aren't going to go through with it anyway. They like to drink wine, but do they want to get dirty out in the field and be on a tractor? And probably not, So I figure I got to eat lunch anyway, and I'm not wasting that time, And the other thing is they almost feel always compelled to buy me the lunch. So, so on top of that, I got a free lunch. So it works out just fine, But I'm into this. I'm into wine. I have a 3,000 bottle wine cellar, and I lead trips to Italy every June, every September. If you ever want to go to Tuscany, and all we do is eat and drink. It's called. You can see the website Wine All the Time Tours, because we don't do museums. We just eat and drink. Okay, so that's what I'm into. A lot of guys that came on when I came on are retiring now. But I feel like, when I'm drinking a glass of wine, I'm basically working. So there's really no need for me to retire, Now, whenever I say that, especially when the dean is in the audience, I could see he cringes a little bit. But that's the truth. So, in fact, on the way here, I was going to get here way too early, Jane. So I was coming up 55, and one of the best wineries in the East is right off 55 there, called Heritage Winery, William Heritage Winery. And I don't know, the car just turned that way, So I, taste it a little bit, So, yeah, Peter and I work together. He's a plant pathologist. I'm a plant physiologist, more cultural and nutrition, that kind of stuff. So the basic thing, the way this Rutgers thing works is there's a research station with a pathologist, entomologist, weed scientist, all those. And then I have the county office. And then, so if blueberry guys have any kind of problem whatsoever, they call me up. Can you come out and look? And so, I'm sort of the Sherlock Holmes of blueberries, to decide what the heck is going on with it, But if there's a problem that I can't figure out, I might bring in Peter. I might bring in the entomologist, the weed scientist, et cetera, And then all of them weekly during the season write up what's going on, and I write up an article, and we have something called the Blueberry Bulletin, and that goes out actually all over the world. It's on the web, so so as a result, I may get questions from somebody in Argentina or Italy or wherever, and so we have, because of all those people at the station, easily the best team in the country when it comes to blueberries and the support of the growers. So, but it's apropos that we talk about blueberries here because blueberries were invented in New Jersey, okay, and that's what we're going to talk a little bit about. So that picture is of Elizabeth White. Elizabeth White invented high bush blueberry industry, and so I don't know how many of you actually been to Hamilton to see the blueberry harvest, et cetera. But this is what it usually looks like. We have big berries here, yeah. The second name is Mark Ehrenfeld, and he actually helped put together some of this history. In 53, Elizabeth White was interviewed, and she was 82 at the time, and it was good because she passed away the very next year. The area that she has is in Burlington County. That family was a long-time cranberry family, and the area is called White's Bog, okay. And you can visit White's Bog. You can go there. You can see the original field where the blueberries were, and so that's the original blueberry field, and that is actually her house. Okay, and so this is the outpost where she actually was working on the farm when they were actually packing up the fruit, right? And then she put out this announcement, and what she basically said to people was, if you go out in the pine barrens, right, and if you could find berries that will fit through here, I'll pay you $1 for that plant. She says, you have to take me back to that plant. We will dig it up and bring it to my farm. So, but if you could find a berry that goes that big, then it's $3. The other thing is that once you show me that plant, we'll name that berry after you, okay? So that's why we had, Catherine and Alice and all these old varieties long ago. Now, this is in 1914, and you notice she called them huckleberries then, okay? And what happened is once she really got going, Frederick Coville from USDA in Beltsville, Maryland, came up, and what he did basically is teach her a little bit about botany. Nobody eats huckleberries. Everybody thinks that when they go in the wild, those are huckleberries. No, those are wild blueberries. You're not eating huckleberries. Huckleberries have 10 large bony seeds, so nobody ate huckleberries, okay? So she had to change this to blueberries with time, okay? And she did. Then she came out with this, and this is the difference between huckleberries and blueberries, okay? So blueberries have 10, 20, 30 seeds in them, but you just don't notice them because they're so small, okay? And so these are her test beds at Whitesbog, where she did the cuttings. And here they are, Elizabeth White and Frederick Coville. I get a kick out of the fact that, you know, he's got a shirt and tie on. Yeah. You know, I got to tell you, when I go into blueberry fields, I'm not wearing a shirt and tie, okay? And this is 1920. So they were doing all the crosses. So once they got those plants from the bogs, then they started making crosses to come up with new berries, right? And interesting enough, it's a little hard to see, but so this is his fingernail. He put nail polish on, right? So that when he put the pollen on there, you could see the pollen, okay? And then this is the blueberry flower, and he's touching the pollen to the pistil, okay? And so that's what he's doing, is the cross right there, okay? And that's what we used to do. We didn't use nail polish. We used actually small paintbrushes, and then, you know, we'd have a little tube with pollen, put the paintbrush in and touch the flowers, and that's how we used to do it. But this is some of actually her notes, and this was an interesting one. There was a guy in the Pine Barrens who found a plant that she liked, and his name was Rube Leek, okay? And she had a problem that, because she figured she can't name the blueberry variety Rube. You know what a rube is, right? So and you can't name it a leek because that's a vegetable, right? So what she did is she took R-U-B-E-L-E and called it ruble. And so that was one of the very first varieties that were released. But these are actually her notes on, you know, what they thought about this, right? It was found in 1912 by Rube Leek near Chatsworth. So a lot of this happened around Chatsworth, which is in Burlington County, right? And and then she actually took a picture of where they found this plant, you know, because you couldn't just bring a berry and say, this is great stuff. You had to take her back to that plant, okay? You know, if you couldn't show me where the plant is, she wasn't going to give you the buck, right? So, but you know, this is some of the varieties. You know, they called it Catherine, right? Pioneer. Now these varieties are long gone, you know. You just won't find these anymore. But these are the early varieties. And so the New Jersey Experiment Station in Rutgers, with time, got involved in this, you know. And so then they started making these crosses, and that's what all this is crosses. Here's Jersey cross with Pioneer, Jersey cross with Ruble, etc. So, you know, they started making these crosses and to get varieties. And so these are varieties that came out of Elizabeth White's crossing, okay? So here's Ruble, like one of the very earliest, right? So, you know, Grover, Adams, Dunphy, Sam, you can realize that they're long gone. Catherine, Cabot, Rancocus actually is still around. You could still find Rancocus. June, Stanley, you know, these are all named. Now Weymouth is the interesting thing about that one is that it was very early. And so actually it only went away in the mid-90s. It was the early variety for Jersey growers until the mid-90s. For the main reason that it was just early. It was small, it was dark, and it was low yielding. But there was nothing else from an early standpoint, so, you know, but it's been totally replaced now. And then and later on in '66, a variety was developed called, and they named it after Elizabeth White, Elizabeth. You all have never tasted Elizabeth. That is the best tasting blueberry in the world, okay? And it would blow away anything that you've ever had, okay? And you can still get those plants, okay? There's a nursery in Chatsworth called Ammons, and you can get Elizabeth plants from them. And so why don't most of the growers grow it? Well, because it is not the highest yielding, okay? And the bigger reason is that those plants tend to fall out like this, right? And you know, Jersey guys do a lot of mechanical harvesting. You can't run a harvester over something that spreads. That has to be erect. So as a result, but from a homeowner standpoint, I call Elizabeth one of the gourmet varieties. From a homeowner standpoint, you don't care about that. You don't have a mechanical harvester, you know. So that's one of the varieties you definitely should be growing, okay? And believe me, once you taste it, you go, I guess I've never tasted a blueberry before, okay? The variety that we've replaced Weymouth with early is called Duke, okay? Duke is high yielding, a good size, really pretty, like sky blue. It's beautiful, right? But even when it came out, the breeder, when it had flavor, the breeder put mild. When a breeder says mild, it means there's no flavor. You know, so you know but that's what we grow. You know. So in the beginning, the sales went to Atlantic City from White's Bog, and actually the first sale ever was in 1916. So it was only in 2016 that the 100th anniversary of the blueberry industry. So it's, you know, much newer than, you know, apples and peaches and all that kind of stuff. You know. So where are we today? Well. There's more than 44,000 acres of blueberries, you know, millions of pounds of fruit, and the value is you know, $500 million. So this is the White's Bog farm, and like I said, you can go there and visit, and they have the tours, the whole thing. And it's very interesting. They preserved almost all the buildings, original buildings. It's pretty cool. And so the experiment station got involved. So the New Jersey Experiment Station, you know, was set up by the Morrill Act that got us public lands, Hatch Act, and that developed the land grant. So, you know, Rutgers is the land grant university in New Jersey. Penn State is the one in Pennsylvania, University of Maryland, et cetera, right? And then, you know, the Smith-Lever Act, 1914, was land grant concept. So that's when really things got rolling as far as land grant and research. So when you go to White's Bog, you're going to see this little house. And that was the whole experiment station back then, and that was it was really cool when I went to see it. Back then, you could get the Sears catalog and order a house, and so that came out of the Sears catalog, okay. And when you go in there, there's a microscope in there, and et cetera, but it's pretty cool that you could order a house, okay. So early on, you know, they were working with cranberries and blueberries, okay, and so but now this is the station now, okay, and it's, you know, there's been a lot of improvements, additions, etc. And you notice the names under Rutgers, Beckwith, Dorrit, but Phil Marucci was the entomologist there. And he was there till somewhere around 99, I think. somewhere around there, I think. So when I was a grad student, I would go down there, and my research was there. And Phil Marucci was the consummate teacher. The guy was amazing. He was sort of the Yule Gibbons of the Pine Barrens, you know. I mean, I'll never forget that I brought a class of high school kids there one time, and he had them sit down next to a bog, and he was explaining that how specific and unique the Pine Barrens are. You know, there's an orchid there in the Pine Barrens that there's nowhere else, you know. And he was talking about the flora and the fauna there, and I was sitting back, and I noticed behind the kids, a snake came out of the bog and just kind of curled up and started sunning itself, right? And well, Phil caught it right away. He saw it right away, and he, in his way, talked about how unique everything was in the Pine Barrens, and if we're lucky, and you wait, you might see these things, right? And do you know that? I mean, you know, high school kids, when they see a snake, they're going to scream bloody murder. Do you know there was no screaming whatsoever? He goes, oh, look at that, look at that, look at that. This, you know, this is a water snake from here. And they just turned around and they looked, and that was it. You know, I mean, he was amazing. He really was amazing, this guy. So, this is Frederick Coville. By all accounts, one of the damn best-looking guys you're ever going to see. I mean, every picture I've seen of this guy is like, holy mackerel, you know. And but then he came up and worked with Elizabeth, and then came out with Experiments in Blueberry Culture. So, you know, he figured out blueberry bushes require soil more acid, right? That was a biggie. Someone came up to me, you came up to me and said, well, somebody brought some blueberry plants and a lot of them died. Yeah, you know, the take-home message is the three most important things to grow blueberries are pH, pH, and pH. Okay, when anybody says there's something wrong with my blueberries, you go, what's the pH? Okay, you know, because blueberries require between 4.5 and 5, okay? If you're lower than that or higher than that, forget it, okay? They can't take up water, they can't take up nutrients, all right? It's just like if I invited all of you over my house to have dinner, and when you sat you down, put the food in front of you, and I said, okay, go ahead and eat. But the other thing I did was I put a piece of duct tape over your mouth. That's a blueberry at 4.2. That's a blueberry at 5.5, okay? And I'll show you a great example of that a little later. But Frederick Coville really they put this blueberry industry on the map. I mean, they really made it take off, okay? And so, you know, and it just keeps growing. I mean, fresh market production, millions of pounds. 2000 was 90 million, now 328. I mean, you know, worldwide, it's just blown up, right? I mean, the blueberry industry has just blown up. So here we go, growth of fresh market blueberry, Chile, Mexico, Peru, right? So here's Peru has gone nuts. I'm sure that if you've bought blueberries in November, those berries were Peru, all right? You know, Mexico has taken off, and Chile has taken off. Then Chile ran into some problems, but you know, they've all blown up. So you know, there's all different seasons when they come in, and so the blue is when it's the U.S. The orange or the green is domestic, and actually this is a better shot. So you know, when I came on in '84. Basically, there was two places to get blueberries, okay? It was Jersey, and when we were done, there was Michigan. That was it, okay? And look at what it is now, okay? New Zealand, Chile is Mexico, right? Florida, Georgia, California, North Carolina, So here's finally Jersey, right? Here's Michigan, Oregon, Canada, right? Argentina, Uruguay, right? Peru is in here. So, you know, the blueberry industry is it used to be everybody was waiting for Jersey to get online. Now, you know, there's blueberries year round, okay? That's a good thing for consumers, but it also means for Jersey guys, there's an awful lot of competition. And the other is like, you know, if you did buy any blueberries in November from, and they were from Peru, they were these big giant berries, right? For the most part, they had no flavor, right? But they was big giant. Well, see, Americans like anything big, okay? You know, size does matter, okay? And so big, so they buy them anyway, even though they had no flavor, okay? So, you know, as a result, I mean, in fact, we just hired a new blueberry breeder for the research station. And you know, she's very aware of, you know, what she needs to do and how fast she needs to do it, okay? And that's a reality. So this is what has happened in New Jersey, you know, after, you know, when they basically got the industry started, of course, it just took off, right? And then it really leveled out, and then we also had a bump up late, okay? So now, again, we're pretty stable. We're not losing any acreage, okay? But instead, what is happening is farms are being sold that you know, for the longest time, 20, 25 years, 30 years, I never saw a farm being sold, ever, okay? Now they're being sold, a couple of reasons. One is the fellows are getting older and their kids don't want to do that anymore. You know, they actually realize farming is not easy, you know. The other is that they're being bought by big corporations that have farms in all kinds of areas of the world. So they have, you know, they also own a field in Mexico, they own in British Columbia or Chile, or so they want to have blueberries for sale year round. So New Jersey fits that niche in the middle there. But so that's kind of what's happening. You know, for the longest time, we had the biggest blueberry farm in the world. It's called Atlantic Blueberry, right? 1,400 acres, right? And it was established in 1935. And 2 years ago, that was sold. Now, I never thought that was going to be sold, ever, okay? It's a big family operation, et cetera, but it was sold, and it was sold to a group that's based out of British Columbia, okay? So that's, you know, the writing is on the wall there, you know. So the Marucci Center for Blueberry and Cranberry Research, as I mentioned to you, you know, Ocean Spray is there. Of course, Rutgers is there. USDA is there, right? And as I said, we have, you know, the pathologist, entomologist, weed scientist, IPM. We run an IPM program. So scouts go into the blueberry fields once a week and monitor for insects, diseases, et cetera. Then we take leaf samples and soil samples in early August and run them through. All those samples are brought to me after they're analyzed, and then I make all the fertilizer recommendations. So, but all the fields are monitored on a weekly basis, so that, you know, if they have a problem, they're told to spray. If they don't have a problem, then they are told not to spray. I mean, that's basically what it comes down to, okay? And so it really is an amazing place, actually. So this is the research farm, and, you know, Peter Ottomans is right here. Peter is the pathologist also. He's the experiment station department head. And so Jim Polishuk is a pathologist, and he's the USDA. We just got a few years ago Thierry. Thierry is the weed scientist. You know, they used to call weed scientists nozzle heads, you know. because all they do is, okay, I'm going to get a chemical and spray that weed and kill it, But it's amazing the stuff he's doing now, with using electric almost zap to kill weeds, or he's got all kinds of other things. It's really cool. Cesar Rodriguez, they used to call the entomology people nozzleheads. Well, we got insects, better go out and spray, right? But what he spends most of his time developing mating disruption kind of controls, so that the insects get confused and they don't mate, so you don't end up with damage. So he does a lot of that stuff, and he's innovative as heck, really innovative. So and then of course we have the breeders. We have 2 USDA breeders, and we just got Gina Sadelli, 6 months ago, and the pressure is really on her, I can tell you. I mean, the industry sees all these varieties from all other places, and we, Duke, our number 1 variety was released in 1994 or something. So we've been growing the same thing for 30 years, The other variety is Blue Crop, and Blue Crop was released in 1953. So, obviously we need to, pick it up a bit, in New Jersey. So all of us every year come out with the pest control recommendations. So all the controls of all the insects, diseases, weeds, and then I put in there the whole nutrition aspect of the whole thing. Okay, and so that's the big thing that we produce and give out to the growers. We have a meeting the end of February. It's called the Blueberry Open House. And the amazing thing is, I've always been so impressed that the entire industry shows up. I mean, it's not like, it's 30% of the growers or 40%. No, I mean, it's 100% of the growers unless they're sick, I mean, they're all there because at that meeting, all of us present the newest stuff, and they all can hear all the footsteps from all over the world, and they better be on the cutting edge because, they're not going to be here too long, So, and now the funny thing is when I started doing the open house, Phil Marucci had done it before me, and my first meeting, I said, I had been to Phil's. Phil would have it in a firehouse in February, in the garage. It'd be 24 degrees in there, and you're sitting on a metal chair, and there was nothing to eat. Maybe there was one coffee, And I said, we're not going to do that. I mean, we're going to have it in a place with something called heat, and we're going to have a lunch, and so I put out the program, and Phil came back and said, well, you're charging for this. I mean, you can't call it the open house if you charge, And I said, Phil, believe me, everybody's going to love it much more than freezing in a firehouse, So it's the only time he and I had a little thing, but So one thing that has really come up, the reality is that these guys have been growing these blueberries pretty much the same way for a long time. They've been using herbicides under the plants, and I don't know where this started, but they rototill the middles, okay? And they rototill the middles 2-3 times a year, right? And you realize that, and I'll show you this later, but blueberry, evolved in the pine barrens. So what is the pine barrens? The soils are, 4.5, 4.8 in that area, okay? Organic matter is 5, 6, 7, 8%, okay? It's very high. The water table is 2.5 feet down, all right? I mean, Phil took me out in those places, in the pine barrens, and there's places that you could literally go like this and the ground's going up and down, And so what did the growers do? Well, they put herbicides under the plants, and and then they rototilled the middles, and we're doing soil tests, and now everybody's below 1% organic matter. Because when you rototill, you just burn up the organic matter. It's gone, right? And so we did a big test, and because there's a perennial monoculture, right? Decline in soil health. When you do that and there's no organic matter, the microbial diversity goes down like a rock, right? They're having difficulty establishing new plantings, all right? And there's pathogens in the soils, right? So basically, we had to start talking about soil health. We never talked about soil health till 3 years ago or something, okay? And there's a test called Solvita. And what the test is you just take the soil and they measure the amount of carbon dioxide that comes off the soil. What that tells you is how many microorganisms are in there working, right? And, I went out in the pine barrens in native places and took soil samples and then put it against, farmer places, and be 20 times more in the native, And so basically their way of growing blueberries was killing the soil. I mean, you had, blueberry plants should grow 4, 5, 6 feet high. We had plantings that were 25 years old, and the plants would get 2 feet high. I mean, there's something wrong. There's something wrong. And interestingly enough, when it really came down to it, there was two things that were the most important things for blueberries. One I've already mentioned is pH. Okay. The thing is, blueberries can only use ammonium forms of nitrogen. You can't use nitrate, right? So, but ammonium slowly lowers pH over time. So we have a hell of a lot of guys that are 3.5. And so one of the important thing is you got to maintain that 4.5 to 5. Okay. The other is organic matter. You don't have any biodiversity of microbes in your soil unless you have organic matter, all right? So basically I told them, you guys need to sell those rototillers and buy something called a mower, okay? And plant grass there and mow it. If you have desire to go out there 3-4 times during the season, good, mow, but no more rototilling, okay? I don't want to see a rototiller ever again on a blueberry field, okay? I mean, so we really understand now about this soil health thing, But granted, we should have done it 10 years ago. We really should have done it 10 years ago, because now a whole lot of fields are going to take a while to come back, okay? And you can't just increase organic matter overnight or something either, So. But, this is what the fields look like. You'd say, oh, these are young plants. No, this field's 20 years old, right? This field's 20 years old. That thing there is 2 feet high, all right? And those next to it, of course, are just flat out dead, all right? So, the growers, are understanding we're right, and they're funding our research. They're funding our research. So, they know we got a problem here. I mean, on top of everything else with Mexico and Peru and everything else, their yields are way down. I mean, the yields are, that 2.5 foot plant ain't going to turn out much in the way of berries. Let's face it. Okay, so so we're really putting dotting I's and crossing T's when it comes to this. Okay, we really are. So every extension person, I think, has their favorite slide. Okay, this is my favorite slide. So, I've been here 41 years, and it's my favorite slide. Okay, why is it my favorite slide? Well, because, see, blueberry growers call me from, all over the country. So this was a farm in Maryland, and this woman called me up. She says, Gary, the plants are 4 years old. They flowered, and and then the flowers just sort of died, and we have 10 acres of plants that just look like they're about to die. And you got to come down, you know. So I went down there, and I could see that there was nothing bad above ground, you know. And then I could do one of my favorite things in a farm, and that's pull the plant out of the ground, because farmers make funny noises when you do that. You know, they go, you know. So you pull the plant out of the ground. So what have we got here? Okay, this part right here, all right, is the part of the root system that was in the original pot. Okay, when they propagated, and I think you could see it, that these roots are taking right-hand turns, because the root is trying to grow, gets to her soil, and goes, no, I don't think so. No, I can't grow here. So it makes a turn, right? And then this area right here has no roots at all, because the blueberry plant's going, no, I can't, I don't know, I can't grow here, you know, can't. But then she had 3 inches of mulch on top, okay? So she's got some roots, but she's got a plant this high with 3 inches of roots. So it had enough to bloom, right? But then the berry started, and you know, it just collapsed, right? It just collapsed. So I mean, this shows you, and you don't understand. I've shown this slide all over the world. Okay, I mean, this shows you how specific the blueberry plant is. Okay, I mean, you know, you were saying, well, they bought some plants and they died. Yeah, because one of my favorite things is to go someplace like, you know, Argentina or Chile or Pennsylvania and say, you don't understand. To grow blueberries, you have to recreate New Jersey, which scares the heck out of a lot of people. But you know, they evolved in the Pine Barrens, right? So if you're going to grow blueberries, you have to recreate New Jersey, all right? And that's what you got to. So she goes, Gary, what are we going to do, right? I said, it's easy. I said, for one thing, I said, we got to put sulfur down ASAP, right? Sulfur lowers pH. Her pH was at 5.8, right? You got to lower pH. Got to put the sulfur down right now, okay? The other thing is, get all your workers. We have to pick off every fruit off every plant, okay? Because you realize, from a plant physiology standpoint, fruit is called a sink. In other words, all water and nutrients go to producing fruit first. If there's anything left over, it goes to producing the plant. So if the plant's in trouble, the last thing you do is leave fruit on there, okay? So we had to take every fruit off 10 acres, okay? And that's what we did. And we saved the plants, okay? We saved the plant. Now, I can tell you, see, this has got to be 20 years ago. And and I just did a talk down in Maryland. She was there, you know. And holy mackerel, Gary, you going to show that slide again? You know. I said, it's my favorite slide. You kidding? You know. But her fields now are gorgeous. They're gorgeous because pH is at 4.5 to 5. Okay, the organic matter is high, right? And if you're not in natively high organic matter, you mulch every year, you know, and with sawdust mulch. So, but this is it really does show you just how specific this thing is. Okay, and so so we're coming along. I mean, I think we're gonna have to come out with new varieties. But they have to have flavor. They have to have flavor. They're going to have size because U.S. people, everything's got to be big, you know. I mean, it blows me away that when you go to ShopRite, people actually buy those things, those red things in the package. California calls them strawberries. Okay. There's no flavor, right? You cut them in half, they're white in the middle and hollow in the middle. You see, hollow has no flavor. You can test it. See, just do this. Nothing, right? So So, God, people, and people buy that garbage, I mean, if you love strawberries, you should be growing your own strawberries. It's no big deal to grow strawberries, I got to tell you. And there are varieties. In fact, Rutgers came out with a variety called Scarlet that is really nice flavor, okay? And you can get those plants, and you don't need a whole lot of them, right? And I mean, if you have 20 plants, you're going to have strawberries. And the great thing is you serve them to your friends, and they go, my God, I never tasted a strawberry like this. Because they've been, the number one criteria for California strawberries is they could put it on the road and roll it from California to New Jersey. and it will look like when it was picked, right? They're nice and firm. Yeah, but you're not supposed to be able to play softball with a strawberry, So, I mean, like we say with Duke Blueberry, I mean, I told Gina, I said, Gina, you got to come out with an early variety and don't put that word mild there, I mean, when I saw that when it was released, I go, oh my God, I mean, this thing, and of course that's the number one variety, right? So anyway, but so that's pretty much it. I mean, I certainly can take questions and all, but the industry, I think, is in pretty good shape. I mean, my fear, of course, is I've been here 41 years. I don't want to leave and the industry's, gone. I mean, I would hope that the Peter Ottomans and the Cesar Rodriguez and the Gina Sidelis and that we do enough good for the varieties and the industry that they are thriving. That's definitely my hope. But we have some work to do. There's no doubt about it. From a soil health standpoint and from a variety standpoint, definitely. Because people actually buy those Peruvian jumbo things, and they have as much taste as the California strawberries, but people are buying them. What are you going to do? So yeah.
This is slightly. Years ago, there was a delicious iced tea called Jersey Blues. It came out of the Rutgers Cooperative. I enjoyed it for several years, and then it disappeared from the shelves. Right. What happened? Why isn't it there anymore?
Yeah, well, there was we have what do they call it down in Bridgeton? There's a place where it was made. Right. And I don't know. I mean, like they certainly have the berries to do that. Yeah. But I think what it really came down to is the berries to produce that. Processed berries, you don't get the price for them. Our forte is fresh market. Right. And so that you're going to go to a grower and say, well, I need so and so number of tons of berries, and fresh market is $1 a pound, and you're going to pay me 40 cents. That ain't going to fly, But I remember it. It was good. It was delicious. Yeah, it was good. Yeah.
So, where can you get like a test kit to test the pH of your soil?
Very good. Okay, so every there's Rutgers has an office in every county. So Gloucester you have a Rutgers Cooperative Extension in Gloucester County, and you can get a soil test kit there. Okay.
And then my other question, you had mentioned sulfur, but if your pH is off,
right,
you can alter it if you want to bring bushes?
Absolutely, yeah. So. Yeah, in fact, right now, I mean, if you do a pH right now, okay, and it's off, which it will be, and you put the sulfur on now, by the springtime, the snow and the rain will make it work down, and so in the spring, it'll really start working to get the pH where you want it.
So is it in Gloucester County, is our pH soil, is the pH of our soil generally too high?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, almost every place is too high except in the Pine Barrens. Okay. Yeah, almost. I mean, when this came home big time for me too, because when I was a grad student, my major professor, we were growing, he was doing different experiments in large pots, right? Five, it must have been 10-gallon pots. He had the plants in there. So he was done when he said, well, Gary, you can you could take some of these plants. I said, oh, good, you know. So I'm originally from Bergen County. And so I'm like 2 miles from the New York border up there, okay? So I said, Ma, I'm going to bring some blueberry plants and plant them in. And I just put them in the ground, you know, like your buddies, right? And for 3 or 4 years, they did nothing. I mean, like, you know, they looked sick. And slowly I took a soils class, right? And I did a pH, and up there it was 6.2, right? So the blueberries were big. So hello, sulfur, right? And then they just took off, right? So that's really what it comes down to. It's no big deal, but it's just sulfur. Yeah.
Your favorite slide, how long did it take that lady to get plants that were producing after she did the...
Well, I think we had a year where we had to bring them back. That year we couldn't do anything, of course. But by the next year you were picking.
Okay.
Yeah, by the next year you're picking.
And the Atlantic Blueberry Company, are they doing blueberries or are they building
Oh, sure.
houses?
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. Well, the British Columbia people own it, so.
And the other countries, Peru, Chile and stuff, are they with it too as far as the soil and all that stuff? They know what they're doing with that?
Yeah, they're reading all our books.
Yeah, okay.
yeah, reading all our books. Jane, you have a question.
Is there nutritional differences between different varieties of blueberries, or even from country blueberries to other?
That's a good question. For the most part, no. The pH is the same for all of them, all the high bush ones, 4.5 to 5. There's a couple things, like Duke, for instance. When a blueberry gets, the soil gets too high, I don't have that slide here, but when it gets too high, they get iron deficient. And you could see that on the leaves, right? And it's obvious. It can't be anything else than it's iron deficient. I always say, that God put that into that plant, basically saying, hey, stupid, when's the last time you checked their pH? You know? And, so when I see that, I go, oh, the pH is too high. Well, Duke, even when the pH is right, can get iron deficient. So for some reason, Duke needs more sulfur, more iron.
So for instance, but do any different varieties have more vitamin C or more of this vitamin than any, does that vary from?
Oh, that does vary. Yeah, that does vary. But the antioxidants in blueberries are very high, The other thing is they did come out with a new variety called Draper, and the interesting thing is they were the first farmer that had it when the berries were still green, they all started dropping on the ground, and so all of us were out there, and we're cutting the berries in half and figuring this out and stuff. And when you cut it in half, it looked like bitter pit in apples, which is a calcium deficiency. Okay, so this specific variety needs higher calcium. So because you see, as the pH is low, calcium is less available. So as you raise the pH, so my first thought was, well, we'll just have to raise the pH. Well, yeah, but then everything else goes wrong. See, so well, how do you supply calcium without raising the pH? So 2 ways. One, either put a spray of calcium on every week, or you put gypsum in the soil. Gypsum doesn't change pH, but it adds calcium. Okay, so to answer your question, yes, there's varieties that need more of this, a little more of that, whatever, Yeah, it's a good question, yeah.
When you were talking about your colleague was growing different varieties in pots.
Yes.
So can the homeowner do that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You realize the root system for blueberries only goes down 18 inches.
Okay.
Okay, and it's only going to be about this wide.
Okay.
So if you have a big enough pot, you can grow blueberries in pots.
Do you have to get a certain type of soil?
Well, I can tell you that basically if you do 50-50 peat moss and sand, you got it.
Sand and peat moss. Okay.
You got it. Okay, and because peat moss is inherently low pH.
What do you have to do for organic matter?
The peat moss.
Oh, the peat, just keep adding it each year or
Yeah, the
something?
peat moss. Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine. But yes, you 100%, you can grow them in a pot because they don't, it's not like grapes. Grape roots can go 30 feet deep, right? But blueberries, it's 8, because they developed the pine barrens, and the root, the water table was 2.5 feet down, and when that root hits that water, it actually takes 27 hours for a blueberry root to start dying. So it cannot be in standing water,
Okay,
So yeah, pots are definitely you could do.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
You said that they require a lot of organic material, but isn't the pine barrens typically deficient in organic material?
Oh, no, geez. I mean, organic matter in pine barrens is 8-9%. It's really high. It's really high. Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, you could actually bounce up and down. Yeah. No, it's very high.
In the boggy areas, but not in the uplands. Yes?
Well, there's not much, uplands to the pine barrens is 4 feet, so it's not, it's flat. It's flat. Yeah.
So I've lived here for about 2 years now, and I was excited to be in like Hamilton blueberry territory, except that I shop in about 4 or 5 different supermarkets every week. The only supermarket that had Hamilton blueberries was Aldi's for a few weeks.
Right.
Is it the supply? Is it politics? What's going on?
Well, I mean, it's where the co-op or the distributors put them. I mean, I know my ShopRite in Egg Harbor Township always has Jersey berries in it, during the season. So, it's where your buyers are. I mean, it really comes down to the buyers. In Egg Harbor Township, I have no problem getting Jersey berries. So you are just going to have to go to somebody else. It really is the buyer, because we're selling those berries all over the place. I mean, during the season, you got semis going everywhere. Definitely. So you'll just have to look someplace else or go to Aldi's, I guess. Yeah.
For years I've been buying local blueberry honey, but a couple of years ago I went to a talk given by a woman about native bees, and she in her talk said that the European honeybee cannot pollinate blueberry plants. So those two things are at odds, and
You have to understand that there's people who know what they're talking about, and then there's people who have no idea what they're talking about.
They are pollinated by.
Yes, well, absolutely. Every blueberry, we put in 2 hives per acre everywhere, and that is for cross-pollination. That's what we do, absolutely. So native bees definitely help. There's no doubt about it. But without honeybees, we wouldn't have a crop. Now, I could get into it, but this year was a good pollination year. So when the blueberries were in bloom, it was warm, and it wasn't raining, and it wasn't windy, and it was perfect. Because honeybees are basically pretty lazy. If it's raining, they ain't going out. If it's cold, they ain't going out. If it's windy, they ain't going out. They're basically like teenagers. Yeah, and work almost as hard, right? So now the 2 years before that, during bloom, rainy, wet, cold, and so our fruit size was way down, because every flower needs multiple visits, and the pollen goes on there to pollinate and make a seed. You need a minimum of 10 to 12 seeds to have full-size blueberry. And so often you'll find one with 20, but if a berry is small, I always, they go to me, Gary, why is this berry so small? I cut it in half. You got 2 seeds in there, So I said, what did you do? I mean, how many hives did you have in here, right? If you were cheating on the number of hives, you're going to get small berries, I remember early on there was a guy, and he had all small berries, and he said, I never brought in hives. He goes, always relied on the native bees. And and I turned, and there was this whole new condo complex near the farm, you know. I said, so where were those native bees living? I don't know, they were living over there, you know. So, no, she was 100% wrong. We're doing a lot of bee research, actually. We're trying to teach growers what they could do to increase the native bees, you know, because, and then the other thing is, if it's lousy weather, bumblebees work. Bumblebees will work in lousy weather. So the amount of bumblebees being used now is going up because, you know, again, it's harder to sell small berries.
Well, if they interplant with native plants to attract the native bees, that would help, right?
Yeah, it's, you know, it's just too much of a monoculture to do that, you know. I mean, but you could have on the edges, okay, you can put plants that are good for the native bees, and so that's being done. And you know, and we have a woman, Beth Ferguson, who, but she's been a whirlwind, and so one thing that she really just recently, last year, she realized that the guys were bringing in the hives too late. You know, you can't bring the hives in when you're at 40% bloom, because then you've missed a whole lot of visitations. So she actually clocked when there was bloom, percentage of bloom, and when the guys brought in the hives, and boy, she read him the riot act, you know, and it was great because this past year everybody got on the phone to the beekeepers. You got to get him here 2 weeks earlier now, you know, and it was really good because as a result, the fruit set was great, you know.
So tell me I'm wrong.
You're wrong. That was easy.
So what we're really saying is before European honeybees came, there were blueberry plants here, and they were being pollinated by native bees.
And for the most part, most of the original varieties were self-fertile. Many of the varieties now are self-fertile to a degree.
But we also have among that suite of solitary bees that were the native pollinators. We have like the blueberry cellophane bees, which were doing the job.
That's right, doing the job.
And what you're really saying is like, but when you're running a commercial operation, and it's this monoculture of 1,000 acres, you don't have enough solitary bees to do the job. So you got to have the European honeybees.
Exactly. I mean, on my committee, PhD committee, there was a bee expert, and he actually would go in the field and count how many visitations each plant gets or something, and then multiply that. The typical thing is 1,088 plants per acre, and the per acre it requires something like 2.5 million visits. I mean, it's incredible, you know. So, you know, in the pine barrens, you don't have, you know, 150 acres, you know, of bloom, you know. But you're right. Yeah. See, you weren't wrong. Yeah.
Speaking of bees, my grandfather was the largest beekeeper in Maine.
Oh.
And he would, his specialty was blueberry and raspberry honey. But he made his money from pollinating blueberries.
Right.
But the blueberries up in Maine are not anywhere near what you described in the peacock. Say were bushes on the side of hills, that's the coast, between granite blocks, and they came out little teeny blueberries, and they taste delicious.
Oh yeah, well those are low bush. Okay, that's a different species. You know, my whole wife's family was from Maine, so I've been up there many times in the field and stuff. So those are low bush. They only get that high, you know, and they're very small. Yeah, so they make a great pie, you know, great for you know, muffins, etc. But actually, to eat them, you're pretty much just eating skin, you know, and they are flavorful. But if I had my grandmother up in Maine, when we went up there, she wanted me to bring Jersey berries. Yeah, Jane.
One last question. What's the percentage of blueberries from New Jersey now about? Like, what percentage does New Jersey supply?
Oh, you mean worldwide?
Well, at least in the U.S., let's say.
Yeah, I think it's 8%. Because we were number 2 for the longest time, and now we're at number 5. Not because we've decreased in acreage, but because, you know, Washington got really big, Oregon got really big, California got really big, you know, Georgia got really big. So I think we're number 5 last year, you know. Yeah.
Is the harvest labor intensive? And I'm wondering if it is, the immigration situation, are they having trouble getting?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the way it always worked for the longest time is you brought in labor, okay, from Mexico, from Puerto Rico, from Haiti, and what they would do is blueberries are picked once a week, and most of them need either 3 picks or 4 picks, okay? So the hand picking was done for the first, second, and maybe the 3rd pick. The last pick was always done with a machine, okay? Now the problem with the machine is it doesn't know anything about, is this one ripe, is this one green? It just picks everything, right? So you can't put it over the plant, you know, the first pick, right? So, but the problem now is getting labor, right? And now we do have something called an H-2A program that helps. But what they've now developed is they have an optic sorter. So when the machine picks unripe and ripe, you can put it on the conveyor belt, and the computer will actually kick out the green ones, et cetera. And now the problem with that is it also decreases your yield because you're kicking out the green, right? But there are guys now doing 100% mechanical. And that's not really the way to go, you know. Hand picking is better, you know, because you're picking, you know, the ripe fruit and you're leaving the other ones, right? And so I don't know exactly where that's going to go. Supposedly, what they're trying to develop is mechanical harvesters. See, the way a mechanical harvester works is it goes over the field and it has these big bars, and it just keeps whacking the plant and the berries fall down, you know. Well, there's a new one that's coming out that's jets of air, no banging things, jets of air, and you turn the air up enough to knock ripe berries off, but not green berries off, okay? So there's a whole canister of jets, right, from both sides, and so that's coming down the road. So if the harvester gets much more efficient, that's you know, in the future, but hopefully not too far in the future, you know. So anyway, yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
What's the life of a blueberry plant?
You know, 45, 50 years. Usually plants are taken out before that because somebody wants a different variety, you know. So they get tired of that variety. Like blue crop right now is being taken out for this draper, you know. So that's typically what happens, you know. But a plant can last, you know, a long time. The reason is that what you do is it's the way you prune. So you have the plant in the ground. What we do is we prune out 1 out of every 6 canes. So, and you prune it right to the ground. So even though a planting might be 50 years old, there's no canes out there older than 7 years. Okay? So, because there's a definite drop-off on the amount of fruit that old canes produce. So if you're cutting out 1 out of every 6 canes, it initiates a new cane. And so everything above ground is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. And so even though the planting's old, that's what's going on out there, okay? So the root system's 50 years old, but everything above ground is not, you know? So, you know, I always tell people, if you know how to count, you can prune, okay? You know, if you have 6 canes, you take out 1. You have 12 canes, you take out 2. You have 18 canes, you take out 3. Do you know how to count? Good, you can do it, you know? It doesn't take rocket science, you know? So that's about it, you know? Anybody else? Okay, thanks.